and welcome to Texas Virtual Summit 2020. I have the honor of a direct line to Digital Minister Andre Tang of Taiwan. He has a great record of shaking up Taiwan digitally, and the experience of the Taiwanese government in handling COVID-19 has become a success story. The whole world has been trying to learn from Taiwan. So I have the great honor of having a chat online with Minister Andre. Good morning, Andre. Hi.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, all the way from Taipei now. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good morning, and welcome to Texas Virtual Summit 2020. Because of COVID-19, we are doing it online, virtually, digitally. And you know, Minister Andre Tang, we in Thailand were trying to talk about digital transformation for years. But only COVID-19 managed to force us into real action this time.
It's a real amplifier. Yes.
Real amplifier and real action mover. In Taiwan, I don't think you necessarily needed COVID-19 to push you into digital transformation, right?
That's right. We have a digital democracy. And it improves as more people participate. So we work on digital technology to improve participation and find common ground. That is to say, pro-social media, not anti-social media.
Yes. But what has been the additional advantage of COVID-19 for Taiwan on this particular transformation? Any special pressure, any sort of special push for Taiwan on this?
Yes, there's three aspects that COVID-19 really amplified the digital transformation. It's called fast, fair, and fun.
Wow.
And the fast part is important because our equivalent of Reddit is a online discussion board called PTT.
Yes.
Alerted us that there was a new SARS case last year. So many countries begin countering the virus only this year, but we started last December. Because last December, when Dr. Li Wenliang, the PRC whistleblower, posted there's new SARS cases, he got inquiries and eventually punishment from PRC police institution. But at the same time, there's a Taiwanese citizen called Nomer Pipe, reposted that on the PTT board. And so our medical officers immediately noticed and issued an order, not just asking the WHO, but also issuing an order that says all the flights coming from Wuhan the very next day, the first day of 2020, need to start health inspection. So this says two things. First, civil society trusts government enough to talk about possible new outbreak in public forum, and that we trust the citizen enough to take it seriously and treat it as if SARS happened again, because we've been preparing that every year using the yearly drills and so on since 2003.
So it is not easy to create mutual trust between the government and the people, but how did you manage to create that kind of trust?
A single hotline, a telephone, very simple technology. So anyone who have any new idea to share from the civil society, they just pick up their phone and call 1922. And the call center operator, probably using the same headphone as I'm using, will listen to you and tell your idea to the CECC. For example, in April one day, a young boy called and said he doesn't want to go to school because his schoolmates may laugh at him because all he has is a pink medical mask. And so he may get bullied. And the very next day, everybody in the CECC, that's our health minister, start wearing pink medical mask and making sure everybody in the daily live streamed press conference, they answer all the journalist questions and they spread the idea of gender mainstreaming, which is a social innovation. So if you have a good idea to it being amplified into the whole society, that just takes 24 hours. So that makes trust apparent.
Wow, it's instant and it is effective.
Yes.
You started with fast, and then the second F?
Fair.
Fair.
Yes, it's
fair.
the fairness.
Right.
So, for example, when we ramp up the facial mask production, making sure everybody can use their national health insurance card to collect masks from nearby pharmacy. Fairness is our guiding example. And in many other countries, when you do this kind of rationing, of course, there's a certain freedom of information, right? People may ask, how well are each place selling? What's your supply? What's your demand? But usually people publish it maybe weekly, maybe at the end of the day, and so on. But we publish every 30 seconds. If you publish the stock level of masks in pharmacies every 30 seconds, that becomes a distributed ledger that makes sure that everybody can go to the pharmacy, present their national health insurance card, and purchase 9 if you're an adult, 10 if you're a child, and see the stock level of that pharmacy actually decrease by 9 or 10 in the next couple of minutes. And if you see actually the stock level increase after you purchase, you call 1922 and say that there's something wrong with the system. So because everybody can hold everybody to account, it makes this co-creation a social innovation. It doesn't need a blind trust to any accountant or any public servant. Everybody can see with their eyes that we have indeed a growing supply. And people can write their own analytic tools to say, oh, here there's an oversupply, here is an undersupply, and that changes the way that we distribute the mask. So it's a full life cycle of fairness.
Wow, the fact that you could publish or update information every 30 seconds is a miracle.
Yes. So it's a fully automated system because Taiwan has more than 99.9% of health coverage. So people who show any symptom will then be able to take the medical mask from nearby pharmacy, go to a local clinic, and know that they will not incur any financial burden. And also this independent analysis, this is not from the government. This is just a civic technologist. And they say, according to their analysis, the mask only reaches 70% of people because there's many people in large municipality when they go off work, it's already 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or the pharmacy closed, and so they cannot access the mask anymore. And so we work then with the convenience stores, which are open 24 hours a day. Using the same NHI card, you can just swipe there and collect your pre-order the week after. And so fairness of all kinds, first for people who are not so versed in digital technology, but then amplifying it so people can order using an app, a website, or on the kiosk that is also not just fair, but also convenient.
Yes. And this fits in with what I heard you say in one of your speeches on TED Talk about radical transparency, civic participation, and rough consensus, right? It fits in all the three main principles.
Yes, the rough consensus is very important because if this is about fine consensus, like you have to vote and sign their name on and so on, it becomes very time consuming. It's hard to reach such a consensus. But rough consensus is just, we can live with it. And that's easy to reach. And it's much easier now that our premier, Suthichai, smiling happily here, is so willing to spread the rough consensus and the new clarification using memes. And that is the fun part of fast, fair, and fun.
Okay,
fast
fun, right. It has to be fun.
Yes. So fast and fair is good, but it only reaches a part of the population that are already interested in democracy.
Right.
How do you reach the part of people who are not interested in politics?
No.
You have to be fun.
Right.
You have to be fun.
Right.
So that is the point. So when there was, for example, a panic buying of tissue paper, there was a rumor that said because we increased the production of facial masks from less than 2 million a day to more than 20 million a day, tenfold increase, it will use the same material as the tissue paper, and we will run out of tissue paper soon. Of course, that's not true.
No.
However, the people who are paying attention to the journalists and so on, they may believe the conspiracy theory and just go and buy some tissue paper, causing a shortage. And so we see that rumor growing, but within an hour, the premier, you saw him smiling in the slide before. Now he is showing his bottom and wiggling it a little bit. And the font here says, we only have one pair of bottoms each. Meaning that it doesn't pay to panic buy and stock the tissue paper. And it says the tissue paper are from materials from South America, and the medical masks are from domestic material. These are not the same material. And so this meme goes viral. Everybody loved this wiggling bottom of the premier. And so it reaches more people than the rumor. And after 2 days, we see it's like a vaccine. Everybody who saw this meme, they don't panic buy anymore. They know it's different. And we found out the person who spread the rumor was a tissue paper reseller. And so this is what we call a humor versus rumor way of countering this information. And that's the fact, not just one time, but also all the time. So we explain physical distancing by the spokesdog of the Ministry of Health and Welfare. If you're indoor, it's 3 dog. If you're outdoor, it's 2 dog. And remember to cover your mouth and nose when sneezing, and don't put your hand to your mouth. You wear a mask to remind yourself not to do that. And so all of this, including on popular online games, you can see also those memes spreading, and that makes rumor harder to spread than our humor.
So it's not only technology. You have to have creative team, a creative team of people who spot any fake news, any rumors, unfound rumors.
And the comedians.
And comedians also helping the Prime Minister?
Yes, the Prime Minister's chief comedian was just a few weeks ago made into the administration's spokesperson.
Really?
So
wow.
he is responsible for not only that we only have 1 pair of Botox each, but also responsible for this, which is hilarious. Like there was a rumor that say, perming your hair will be subject to $1 million fine next week. And it says it's not true. And the young prime minister says, even I may be bald now, I would not punish people who look like my youth. And the fine print says, what we have done is a label and requirement for hair products that take effect on July 2021. And the premier now says, however, if you keep perming your hair many times a week, this will not damage your pocket. It will damage your hair. Just look at me for what will happen to you.
Wow. So,
it's very funny, but he makes fun of himself, not other people. So it's really good humor.
So that is the fun part.
Yes.
And the people
fast,
take it in.
And fun.
And the people take it in and see politics as fun and as real life also, because
as engaging.
So you feel that, hey, the Prime Minister, the government is talking our language. Right?
And we, if we have a good idea, like wearing pink medical mask, or using a traditional rice cooker to disinfect the mask, you just call 1922, and your idea become the next day's meme.
I see. So this is real open source and open option for the public. So anyone can really take part. Is that what you mean by civic participation?
Yes, and this is what I mean by collective intelligence. Because everybody can help us thinking of new social innovations. That is to say, the ideas, the design, that if they go viral, it makes the society better.
Yes. And of course, the COVID-19 experience, which I think, of course, started in Wuhan, which is quite close to Taipei.
Yes.
And you were the digital minister. Of course, when did you first hear about it, and what kind of reaction, personally as a minister and collectively as government, how did you react to that?
Yeah, well, because when we started this health inspection for flight passenger, this is public. Right? So everybody learns about something like SARS happening again. They may pay attention more to the news if they're a medical officer. Maybe they're busy considering which presidential candidate to vote, because January 11th is our voting day. And so I think I shared to international journalists on January 9 that we think SARS is coming again.
January 9. How did you get that information? Now, how did you get it confirmed?
Well, we don't know. At that time, nobody knows, right? We sent 2 medical officers to Wuhan to discover what's happening. And we found that even though that the academics, the scientists there already have some idea of what's happening, we sent those people on the 12th of January. But to the journalists and to WHO, at that time, they were still saying there's no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission.
Yeah.
And so this like 2 weeks of gap, like everybody in Taiwan already bracing for impact, so to speak. But everywhere around the world, they're still waiting for a confirmed human-to-human transmission. And so my personal response, again, is just engaging this humor over rumor response system. I work with the Minister of Health and Welfare's participation officer who live with that dog. Actually, the dog is a companion animal. It's not Shutterstock. We did not pay for this copyright. Whenever there's a new CECC announcement, they just go back home and ask the dog to pose. And like the Taiwan model dog, and take a new picture, and then there's a new card, and I explained to the journalists and along with our spokesperson how this humor over rumor system work. At that time, it's primarily for quenching the fear, uncertainty, and doubt about panic buying of masks. That came first, and when we deal with that, then tissue paper and so on, and eventually this become a new culture. Everybody's starting to share those dog memes.
So the reaction came fast, and the first reaction was that if it is true, if there is a new outbreak of epidemic, then we should be ready. And what lessons from SARS that were there in place for you?
Yes, so there's two main lessons. One is that we need a central epidemic command center for the CECC. These people are what we learned from SARS was that back in 2003, the municipality and the central government are saying very different things. And people get confused when they hear different message from different ministers or from different mayors. And so the CECC is a place where they can ask all the ministries to send dispatches. And they work together in the daily conference so that if you have any fear, uncertainty, or doubt, you dial 1922 and your answer, along with all the journalists' answers, will be answered the very next day. So
from one source, from one centralized source.
From one centralized source. And this become the official source. There is no dispute from different levels or different ministries of the CECC. So this is the most important thing, is the consistency in listening and communication. The second, I would say, almost as important as is the border control. So the border inspection began very early, and we set up the CECC even before we have a local confirmed case. And so we're not reactionary. We're doing advanced deployment, saying that if you return from a high-risk area, we have quarantine hotels for you to stay for 14 days. If you prefer to stay at home, provided that, of course, you live with no vulnerable population, then you're allowed to do that. But your phone, if they move outside of the digital fence of your vicinity, according to the data, the telecom are already collecting the cell phone strength data, then we will send an SMS to your local police or household manager so that the warden or the police will go and check what happens to your phone. And so because of that, we did the contact tracing from the very beginning in the border, and people suffered, of course, for 14 days of no freedom of movement or limited freedom of privacy. But on the 15th day, constitutionally, they're just a normal citizen. There's no way that we can keep tracking their whereabouts. And so we never had to declare an emergency situation. We're still operating under normal constitutional law.
You didn't need a lockdown like many other
countries.
There's
no lockdown, there's no emergency.
But in Wuhan, they locked the whole town down. They went very strict. They stopped people from moving about. But in Taiwan, you said, no, we don't need to do that. Why? What is the big difference between Wuhan and Taiwan?
So I think the main thing is that it depends on where you concentrate the power. In Taiwan, as evidenced by the mask map, or by people reminding each other to wear the mask as a sign to protect oneself. We rely on the social sector. So the government doesn't control the collection of data. People install apps by themselves, but we did not mandate any Bluetooth or other contact tracing technology. In short, people who have good idea amplify their idea, but the controllership is still in the civil society. Whereas in many other jurisdictions, people accepted that they have to concentrate all the data to a surveillance state. And so whether you empower more making the citizen transparent to the state
Yeah.
that lead to more concentration. Or you make the state transparent to the citizen, as we have done, that empower the civil society. That is the main difference. It's both transparency, but in very different direction.
So this particular epidemic proves something. Which system is better or more efficient, right? You think this time there is a clear comparison between centralization of power or decentralization of power.
That's right, exactly.
But who do you think will win?
No, I think both will get amplified.
Yeah.
And there are also places where they trust neither the civil society or the government. They instead trust private sector multinational companies. That's another choice.
Yeah.
Right. So you can trust them and entrust them with all the data. So I think it's not about winning or losing. This is about the original tendency in the society that will get amplified by the coronavirus, as ours did during SARS.
Yes.
After the SARS, the Constitutional Court charged the legislation to say you need to devise a way to not make this forced dichotomy between privacy and public safety. So we innovate with no lockdown, just as we innovate on the infodemic using humor with no takedown. So no lockdown, no takedown. That's the direction Taiwan is going.
But of course, when you started this experiment this time, you were not quite sure whether it would work or not. Were there any doubts?
No, not at all. Yeah, we depended on the civil society to come up with even better idea. I did not come up with this map idea.
No.
This comes from a young civic technologist in Tainan. Her name is Howard Wu, and he wrote it up himself and paid for the bill. The problem is that he owed Google $20,000 US by the second day. He cannot support the place API usage like that. So we basically took that idea and supported him in his open source coding efforts by absorbing the risk and the data production part. But the application, there's more than 140. There's not just map, because for people with blindness, they cannot that easily use map. But there's also Line chatbot that goes also online the first day. There's also Siri and Google Now assistants, and all the different form factor ensure that there's a fair access. And if it's just me, I can maybe code one tool, not 100 tools.
No. But in Thailand, the experience was that the Prime Minister listened to the medical experts, doctors. The digital part came later. But even today, decisions are made based on advice, suggestions, analysis from the doctors, and not necessarily from the digital experts. In Taiwan's case, the weight balance between medical advice and digital suggestion, which was more important?
Well, in Taiwan, this is we're looking at a very fortunate combination between three Mr. Chen. So the first Mr. Chen is Chen Jianren, our vice president at the time. So if you go to Taiwan Can Help Us, which is my last slide, you can very easily see that who can help. Taiwan Can Help.
Taiwan Can Help, yes.
Timeline.
Right.
And then you see a crash course. Yes. And this crash course is by Dr. Chen Jianren. And he is not just the vice president, but actually the author of the textbook on epidemiology.
Wow.
He's our top epidemiologist.
Okay.
And so when he recorded a crash course on the coronavirus, everybody listens to him because he has both political and scientific authority. And the second Chen, our Commander Chen of Ministry of Health and Welfare, again, shares in this daily press conference all the good ideas that he listens from the civil society. Both he and our vice president say they may know some classical epidemiology, but this is digital epidemiology. They don't know so much about it. They welcome everybody's input. And also our chief cybersecurity information officer, vice premier Chen Qimai, is an expert both in computational public health and also by himself a student of Chen Jianren in epidemiology. And so those three Dr. Chens basically made a triangle that combines evidence-based policymaking with digital engagement because all of them are versed in both the digital and the public health. And it's very fortunate that they were able to basically, there's no need for them to write a presentation to convince decision makers because the epidemiologist is the decision maker here.
Right. And as the digital minister, what was your role then with the three Mr. Chens?
Yes. So my role is of the person who talk JavaScript, who can translate their ideas into working systems and making sure that the civil society, which are all very eager to contribute, can focus their energy on amplifying the open data. And the importance here is that even though I did not code all the lines of code by myself, I understand all the code that is coming our way. I can say, oh, this one violates our privacy guarantees. This one is not using the latest hashing and cryptographic primitives. I can say this one potentially creates more cybersecurity attack surfaces. So I'm like a cultural translator. When we did a hackathon online, of course, the co-hack coronavirus, counter-coronavirus hackathon with the de facto U.S. Embassy, with the AIT, we use a tool that asks everybody what they want to do if they are going to do one thing on managing community resource, making smooth transition, protecting vulnerable groups, etc. And when you look at the comments, it's very interesting because when you look at each and every comment, there's no reply button. We only have upvote and downvote. And so you see people have different ideas. And maybe they get automatically by machine learning clustered into the group that ask for a fine detail of travel history of each confirmed case. You would say Group A is in favor of that. And that includes both US and Taiwan citizens. And Group B is against that. And you can see the evaluation of why. However, we surface the part that broadly has the consensus, the rough consensus between all groups. For example, also making a map, but this time about the essential supplies and where to collect them. And so the same technology applying different ways. And we only amplify the idea that achieve this kind of broad consensus. And the great thing about the digital technology is that you don't have to go through those comments manually. People will crowd moderate and send you this shape at the end. So there may be 5 very controversial ideas. And we thank them for the contribution. We don't do any of it. And we look at those ideas that have broad consensus and we implement exactly those ideas because we know there's already a social mandate. So that's why the CECC and all its digital measures have more than 94% of approval rating because people know this is what the social norm is. And we still thank the 6% of people because they keep us honest and accountable.
Well, when you say there is no reply button,
what I mean, the interface looked like this. So this is the first time we used it for public policy back in 2015 for Uber. So for Uber, people would look at one sentence and say, I think passenger liability insurance is very important. And you can agree, in which case you move here, or you disagree, in which case you move here, and then you see the next statement. After a while, you will be prompted to propose your idea and for other people to agree or disagree. But there is no reply. Because if there is a reply button, people keep going after one another. People respond to people's face, not people's book, right? The face part. And then there's trolls, there's a lot of divisiveness. But because here, there's no reply button, there's no room for troll to grow. And even if you mobilize 5,000 people to vote exactly the same way, the number may increase, but the area does not. And you still have to convince every other group in the polis in order to surface your idea into binding power. So that is how we make a pro-social media instead of an anti-social media.
It's fascinating that this is a very democratic way of making decisions. And you try to avoid clashes of opinions. Instead, you try to find consensus where you agree instead of what you don't agree on, right?
Yes. We agree to disagree on those 5 things. And we don't spend calorie to it. In social media, people spend most of the time just debating those 5 things over and over again.
I know.
But we say, and we say, no, it's okay. You can keep deliberating that. But how about we just implement those 10 measures that everybody agrees with?
But you don't get 100% agreement, of course. They said, what, more than 50%. How do you
94.
94%?
Yes, we get 94.
What if you don't get 90%? What if on a particular issue you get about 40 agree and 40 not agree on the same thing?
Yes. In which case, I think the important thing to note is that people can keep proposing new ideas.
Yes.
And when they keep proposing new idea, there's sometimes a more eclectic version of these ideas. For one example, when we did a digital dialogue on promoting closer people-to-people ties,
yes,
there was something that said Taiwan should make English the primary language of work. Even France have done this. And you can see that this has 37% agreement.
Right.
But 19% disagreement, and most of the people are unsure about it.
How do you go about that?
However, when people continue the conversation, then the top consensus become Taiwan need to quickly move toward becoming a bilingual nation, which is essentially the same thing, just maybe 10 years in the future.
Right.
And that gets 95% approval. So instead of we proposing the questions, we allow people to propose a weaker or a less binding version, or in the future version, more a speculative version of that idea. And that idea of Taiwan should quickly move toward becoming a bilingual nation ends up having like 97% approval.
Wow, it would come to a point when you don't need an elected MP anymore. You don't need
MPs. That is not the case.
No?
I always tell the MPs that they are great in keeping those issues fairly implemented. Because every legislation, every budget interact with one another. So whereas for each and every topic using design thinking terms, the police is great for this explore part where we discover new options and we define the insights. And policy probably stops here. And once we have a face-to-face binding meeting to find out how might we question, still the MPs need to create, evaluate, and build, test, and iterate. So they are great for the second diamond. It's just and the digital democracy is great for the first diamond.
Right. But then MPs would need to learn more about digital reactions, digital ways. Are your MPs up to the task at the moment?
Very, very much so.
Really?
They just, as we are talking, just today, they set up the Open Parliament network as part of our relationship to the Open Government Partnership. And we have this time in the parliament a lot of people who are very passionate about changing the way the parliament itself works to take into account such digital means. So I remain very optimistic.
Wow, great. Of course, many countries would ask for advice from Taiwan over COVID-19. What would be your recommendations to other countries learning from Taiwan?
Yes. So first, don't panic.
Don't panic.
And don't panic. It is very important to not panic. Because if the officials remain calm and when there's any new situation, they just like our Minister Chen Shizhong said, oh, we're in this together. Let's learn about this together. Oh, you have a good idea. I learned something. Then people remains calm and there's no need to panic. And it's only when they hear conflicting ideas from their different levels of officials do people start to panic. So first, don't panic. And the second is that remember, all the digital technology is just enhancing the most important technology, which is soap. And if you don't have access to soap, then maybe alcohol hand sanitation spray. And hand sanitation, when there's a respiratory disease, is the main thing that keep the R value down. If you wear a mask, it's just to remind yourself to wash your hands. And so don't get too excited about digital. Don't get too excited about Bluetooth app or mask. Because at the end of the day, you need to design it so that when people put on a mask or install an app or do whatever, they remind themselves to wash your hands more and keep a physical distance.
So it's physical, it's mental, it's not technology alone. Okay, so that is lesson number 2 that, number 1, don't panic. Number 2, in the end, it is...
Number 2, in the end, it's about the society. It's about mobilizing the whole society.
And number 3?
Number 3, I will now also share what Dolga has to say.
The dog, yes.
Right. Which is not the remember to cover your mouth and nose when sneezing. That is important.
Yeah.
But this general message of the Doga and our premier, and they basically convey this idea of not just don't panic, but rather it should be a very exciting time for social innovators. If you think of any new idea, you need to share with people. You need to make your good idea have an R value larger than 1. You need to make it viral.
Right.
If your good ideas go viral, then the coronavirus will not go viral. And there is a real relationship between the two.
Yeah.
Right. So first, don't panic. Second, mobilize the society. And 3, amplify the good ideas.
So that if your good ideas go viral, the coronavirus will stop going viral. Right? Exactly, right? Yeah. And then, of course, you have to stop fake news and all the bad rumors. And that's how you explain, by monitoring closely and a strong team that would react and act promptly. And also, of course, get the facts out in a very funny way, simple way, people will understand and become part of the task force rather than the opposite. Questioning, asking questions, not trusting the government. The privacy issue and health security, how do you solve that problem? Because
we minimize collection. We do not collect any more data than we absolutely needed to. That is why the digital fence is based on the mobile phone and the signal that the cell tower is already collecting. Because we know that there's existing privacy protection measures on those signals. If we start collecting new data, it's untested technology. But if we only use try and true technology, such as the National Health Insurance Card, such as the cell phone towers, then people already know how to get their personal data copies, how to get updates, how to ask for removal and deletion and things like that. And all of it is just used in a way that are creative, just as the public conversation around the travel history that I just showed you, even though there's many people asking the CCC to publish the identifiable information, the CCC never published the PIIs, and they only very seldomly publish travel history, and that's only when the regular contact tracing did not work. And if they have a good idea of who to contact, who to isolate and quarantine, they never publish any travel history. And that is because we understand if we do more of privacy encroachment, the people who show symptoms will be afraid of going to a local clinic. They'll be afraid of reporting their symptom to the doctor. And they need to know their doctor are still working in their best interest. And that is the main point of the Taiwan model.
But some doctors would want as much information as possible about symptoms, about movements of people. So they come up with tracing, tracking, and treatment. So if the doctors come... Go ahead.
I see your question. And this is what the COHAC is all about. If you go to COHAC, that is by the rough consensus of people who want to both protect privacy and empower contact tracing. So for example, number 3, Logboard, is a app on your phone, and you can record your health information, but it doesn't use Bluetooth. It works in airplane mode. It doesn't transmit any information. But when the contact tracer goes to you, when they say, you've been in contact with somebody with high risk, and then they solve the dilemma, but sharing a one-time link to the dashboard. And the one-time link expires very quickly, and it contains exactly only the part that the epidemiologists need. So unlike traditional interview, where you will divulge the privacy data of other people, you just think of that thing and you tell it, but the other people privacy gets compromised. And strictly speaking, the contact tracer doesn't need that information, right? You can instead just share this one-time link and the dashboard where the contact tracer can visualize their movement and whereabouts and calculate the risk without over-compromising anything else that doesn't need, strictly speaking, for contact tracing to work. And so like Autonomy does that using distributed ledger technology on a neighborhood level. Gemini data does the visualization based on these data collaborative and data democracies, power, and so on. So it's all very interdisciplinary. Then everybody do the whole COHAC by improving the state of the art on privacy enhancing technology. So this is not about just defending our personal data. This is about actively designing applications that are good to use and also will actively protect your privacy.
But of course, doctors have to understand this thinking, way of thinking, that you don't need that much information to be able to work effectively. Because some doctors may say, no, if I don't know enough, I cannot handle the situation.
Right. You need to understand that the self-reports from the patients is by its nature kind of inaccurate. And so if we can settle on the social norm of what is good to collect, what good is to publish, we settle on those. But for example, when you go to a large gathering, we are lifting that restriction next week. But before we lift the restriction, you need to control the total amount of people in that room.
Right.
And you need to leave your contact details so that if there is a symptom or an outbreak, people can contact you. But you don't need to leave your other PIIs. You just need a way to contact you, and you can use, I don't know, email or line number or whatever. And the person running that place need to destroy this after 4 weeks and so on. And there's advisory guidelines like that in fightcovid.edu.tw. So that you can look at all the CDC guidelines and the reason why, and you can use and choose that for yourself, for your school, for your precinct, or for your country.
Yes. In Thailand also, starting yesterday, the third phase of relaxation happened. And if you enter a particular public place, you check in with your mobile phone. QR code, and that information is registered. And when you leave, you're supposed to check out as well. Is that the proper way of doing it? Are you doing that in Taiwan?
Yeah. So at this moment, we're doing even more relaxed than that because all we care is the physical distance. And if we do not keep the physical distance, we advise people to wear a mask. And so what we do is essentially the design of the space for restaurants and bars and so on. Sometimes they're using plastic shields. Sometimes, like for a while, the intimate bars kind of closes because they found no way to like be intimate and drinking while keeping the physical distance. But eventually, they invented a new hat that have a plastic shield, so you can still see each other's face and drink beer, but without compromising the physical distance. And after they invent that, they reopened.
I see.
That is the kind of social innovation we're promoting, because there is no criminal penalty if any business doesn't adhere to such proposals. But people keep each other honest, and if they see a possible situation like in the intimate bars, they come up with social innovation.
Right. So has Taiwan declared victory over COVID-19? Officially?
Well, we say that we passed the midterm exam.
I see. The final exam has to come.
The final exam, which is about vaccination, is yet to come.
I see. So you're doing research also on vaccine, of course.
Yes, of course, and our rapid testing and our pharmacies. I think we already have synthesized remdesivir, and remdesivir import is working quite well. And we're looking at the travel bubbles now with the countries that are declaring a midterm victory. Then we can maybe do rapid testing and PCR in conjunction with the air travel to resume air travel without as long as 14 days. Maybe we shorten it to 5 days of quarantine.
Well, in the United States and many European countries, they also are quite advanced technologically. But why is it that they don't seem to have been able to put COVID-19 under control? Have they not used enough technology?
I think mostly the Taiwan model is about people becoming essentially amateur epidemiologists. And so when people become a fellow in epidemiology, using the resource they have in their life, they can be very creative in coming up with new solutions instead of waiting for the command center to issue an order. So if you ask a random person on the street, why is Taiwan so successful? They will not say that the CECC ordered them to wear masks. They say, I wear a mask when CECC tells me to. I wear a mask even when CECC tell me not to.
Wow.
That is to say,
Okay.
even when they keep physical distance, they're still wearing a mask. And so because of that, people can innovate very freely. And I think getting the people into the same research and development essentially on the counter strategy is the main strategy of Taiwan model. And if you have a very strong technology, but your citizen doesn't understand the technology, then of course citizen will distrust the technology. It's only when the citizens understand why soap work can citizens promote new ways. For example, in Taiwan, they invented new rhymes and lyrics, 内外夹攻大力丸, to teach how to wash your hands properly, and people become creative. But if people don't understand the science, the epidemiology behind it, even though they want to help, they may be doing things that are counterproductive. And I think that is the main lesson of why fairness and this rapid response is so important, because then people who are not panicked understand that they also are innovators.
Yeah. Some people try to compare the political systems with the effectiveness in controlling COVID-19. That if you are a democratic country, maybe you are not able to put down discipline on the people. Countries like China, where there is centralized power, they can order things and things will happen. But Taiwan is a free democratic country, and America, Europe also a free democratic country. What is the difference then? If you were to be asked for advice by the United States and Italy, Spain, the UK, what would be your advice for them?
According to the Civicus Monitor, Taiwan is the only country in Asia with the completely free and open civil society. And in Asia Pacific, only along with New Zealand, one of the two. And the important thing here is that we also had our moments of panic, chaos, and weakness during SARS. And in 2003, we learned from SARS. We decided that 37 people dead is 37 people too many, and we reinvented how the civil society mobilized based on the collective traumatic memory. And so a great thing about liberal democracy is that when everybody learns, everybody can participate to make the society better. And so whereas we may be more chaotic than more authoritarian regimes during SARS, we freely admit that. We also are more resilient, and now we are more prepared. So I would advise the other liberal democracies, because they are maybe past the first wave, maybe they already had their first experience of lockdown. This is the time when your R value is low, when you impose a more strict measures, and you're considering reopen. Consider making everybody an amateur epidemiologist. And if you need help, Taiwan can help. You can dial to Taiwan can help .us and listen to our previous Vice President Chen Jianren teaching you about epidemiology. And you can look at all the nice YouTubers that contributes the Taiwan model. And also, you can look at almost 5 million masks now donated from more than 600,000 citizens because they have plenty. They don't need to collect the ration mask anymore using an app. They say, I want to dedicate my uncollected mask quota to the international society. So if you like those masks that we have donated, you can also call our CECC, who will arrange to set up a small factory almost 24 hours a day, automated, that can produce 2 million medical masks or N95 or R95 according to your choice. You just provide water, electricity, and a parcel of land. We're very happy to, in an open innovation way, share our way of medical mask production to you.
This is great. This is real social innovation. And as you suggested, this is the time to take advantage of the crisis, meaning that there are opportunities in a crisis. What would you say would be the scenario of post-COVID world order? What would change after COVID-19 at the regional level, at the global level?
At the regional level, I think more so than the infodemic before that or climate change, we will have a stronger solidarity between countries and economies that want to tackle common problems. We will have small but beautiful minilaterals like task forces
Yeah.
because we know how it works to like when discussing the travel bubble and so on,
Yeah.
how to look at each other's evidence and numbers and hold each other accountable. So minilateral connection among the different countries with different histories but with the same problem, that will probably grow because we have a positive experience countering the coronavirus.
Yes.
Internationally, I think the humanity will cherish sustainability more, not only because we see a cleaner air and things like that and reduce carbon footprint by cutting off air travel, but we will also see that unless we take care of each other and take care of our communities, if there is even just one place in the world without the epidemiologic coverage, then that place will become essentially an unaccountable source of the next epidemic outbreak. So it's essential that we take on sustainable development, that we share the same global goals, and we extend health for all, leaving no one behind. I think that's a new consensus out of this pandemic.
So you don't agree with people who suggested that globalization is over, that we are in the process of de-globalization?
Well, if they talk about the supply chain and the production and manufacturing, that may be the case. Because during the pandemic, people have to source their different supply chains and reduce the length of the supply chain because travel, even for goods, are severely limited.
Yes.
However, I think it will also promote a globalization of innovations. It may be hard to ship the mask to you. But if I ship the blueprint of how to make this 2 million masks a day factory to you, and using telerobotics helps your skilled persons build that plant, then this is like a 3D print writ large, right? It's like a national scale 3D printing factory. And this is where the innovations can shine and triumph. Even though it may be harder to deliver products and services, it's easier now to deliver innovations on a global scale.
Ideas can be more easily delivered. Local productions can then complete the process. Right?
Yes, and we see each other's face much more closely than we meet face to face and wearing a mask.
That's true.
So this way,
more
this
open.
way is also more open.
More open. Yes.
Yes.
So the last question: how do we prevent the next epidemic?
I think the way to prevent the next epidemic is through collective intelligence, so that the first person who noticed something happened, they enjoy the freedom of speech, and there's no journalistic censorship or takedown that prevents that whistleblowing from spreading. If the whistleblowers can spread, as that spread in Taiwan, the pandemic will not spread.
Thank you very much, Minister Andre Tang. This has been great conversation. I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired by what has happened in Taiwan. And we hope that Taiwan will also lead the way to prevent the next epidemic. Thank you very much, Minister Andre Tang. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.